What's up guys, Meredith with American Trucks, and today we are checking out the Rough Country Red brake caliper covers for the front and rear, fitting all 2019 and newer Ram 1500s. Now factory calipers can look just downright boring, and even with a newer Ram, they can start to show weathering and surface rust fairly quickly, which doesn't look good, especially behind a nice wheel. Now these caliper covers are a good looking option and an affordable option to complement the wheels on your truck rather than take away from them for the Ram owner who wants a sportier feel to their build. Now, I do want to mention that these will require a 20-inch wheel or larger and at least 3/8 of an inch of clearance from the face of the stock caliper to the rear surface of the wheel. So I would just recommend double checking your wheels before pulling the trigger on this set. Now, I think one of the biggest takeaways here from this set is that these are going to have some pretty cool details in their design and more of that caliper look than a cover, and the fact that these are going to be an effortless solution compared to painted calipers that can chip on you over time, especially when you maintenance them. Now you can see that the shapes and the body lines of the cover fit very well, but this is also going to feature stainless hardware and what even looks like a brake hardline and a bleed screw on the end, which is a nice touch compared to some other simplistic options. Now another great benefit of these is that these are going to do a really good job of keeping a lot of that brake dust behind the cover, which will keep your wheels cleaner and cut down on that maintenance when it comes to cleaning your Ram. Now these will be made of a 6061 T6 aluminum construction, being tough enough to hold up to any kick-up and debris that may potentially get behind the wheel. Now the bright red gloss coating will also do a great job of resisting any cracking or chipping and protect the aluminum underneath from any corrosion, in addition to offering that bright red and striking appearance. These will also feature that black RC logo on the front, or Rough Country logo, for a little bit of branded styling, and will blend very well with the rest of the details rather than being super bright and in your face. Now the kit will also come with everything that you need for install, including the clamp-on design, which is going to be easy, and we'll show you how to do that in just a minute. Now for the set, this is going to come in at roughly $225, which will make this one of your most affordable options for a set of 4. I personally think that this stands apart from a lot of the other choices on the page with the design and extra details compared to other solutions. Now choosing a set will come down to your personal preference in the design, considering that this is mostly an aesthetic mod and there are a range of colors and logo designs available, but I think if you want ones that are going to stand out, that are built very well and are going to save your wallet a little bit, then this is going to be a great choice. Now install will be a 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, and honestly the hardest part here is going to be popping the wheel off and putting it back on. Now from there it should only take you about an hour to get all 4 of these on with some pretty basic hand tools. Now speaking of the install, one of our customers has put these on their Ram and is going to walk you through the details and what you can expect out of this install, so that's going to wrap it up for my review. Let's go ahead and get into it.
For this job, we're going to need a breaker bar, and if you don't have a breaker bar, you can just use the lug nut wrench that comes in your cab with the Ram. You're going to need a torque wrench to put the lug nuts back to spec when we're done. We're going to need the included Allen key as well as the 8mm side of the wrench. Both the Allen key and the wrench are included. And lastly, we're going to want the 22mm socket, and that is going to be to break the lug nuts free. So pretty much all the tools needed to just take the tires off of your truck, and then the included Allen and wrench, and you are good to go. Hi, my name is Rob, and today we're going to walk through the process of the Rough Country Red caliper covers for a 19 to 23 Dodge Ram 1500. Let's get started. The first thing that you're going to want to do, if you have air suspension, and all Limiteds come with air suspension, it's an option on some of the other models, is you're going to want to start the truck, and you're going to want to put the vehicle into jack mode or tire service mode. Putting the truck into jack mode or tire service mode prevents the air suspension from trying to level itself out as you lift up the vehicle. All right, so from the main apps screen in the Uconnect, you're going to want to navigate to the settings menu, and then from there you're going to want to go to suspension, and then you will see tire jack mode. You hit the down arrow, we're going to hit this on and make sure that the check is on. and that is going to stop the suspension from self-leveling if you have air suspension. Once the air suspension is in tire jack mode, we're going to shut off the truck and we can get started. So to start, the kit comes with everything that you need, as well as your truck, as long as it has the stock jack stand and lug nut wrench. I'm going to make it a little bit simpler on me. I'm going to use my own jack and my own lug nut wrench, breaker bar, and torque wrench to put it back together. But if you didn't have access to that and you just wanted to keep it super simple, right here on your passenger side, there's a little handle right here. If you pull that off, your stock jack and wrench is going to be in here to remove and then reassemble the tire. But I'm going to go grab my own stuff and we'll get right into it. All right, so once we have the truck in the jack stand mode, we're just going to want to put the emergency brake on here by pulling up on your emergency brake tab. Starting at the front, we're going to want to put the jack in the front upper control arm on the rear side. So this jack is going to want to come out at the rear side of the front tire. That is where Ram recommends that we jack the truck up from. So we're just going to start there. Jack's going to come out at a 45-degree angle, get it just high enough to pull off the wheels. But before we get it up in the air, we're also going to want to break those lug nuts free. All right, so like I said, that you can use what is under the passenger seat that comes with your truck to remove the wheel. I'm going to use my own stuff because it's going to be easier. I have a breaker bar and I have a 22 millimeter socket at the end, and we're just going to break all these lug nuts free before the tire lifts up from the ground. Now I'm just ensuring that I have all lug nuts free. Looks like all right, we're all good. Now we're going to get this under the upper, the rear of the front control arm. All right, so now that we have the lug nuts free, we're going to want to get this jack under that upper control arm on the rear side. All right, so now that we have the tire just off the ground a bit, we can continue removing the lug nuts. Now that we have our lug nuts removed, we're going to go ahead and remove the tire. And this next process should be pretty simple. Now that we have the tire off, we're going to make sure that we have the correct caliper cover for this caliper. So because we are on the front passenger side, we're going to want the larger caliper for the front, smaller ones are for the rear. But we're also going to want to make sure that the bleeder valve here, even though it's just for aesthetic purposes, is facing upward for it to fit properly. So I have the one where the bleeder valve is facing upward. It's going to latch on from the bottom starting first, and it's going to clip on with this other clip at the top. And these are going to go between the caliper and the rotor. And so there is a screw and nut here, and I'm just going to remove the nut so that I can remove the part that clips on to the top, starting at the bottom. We're just going right over top of the existing caliper, nothing to remove. Now I made sure that it is pulled taut so that this is covering the entire caliper. Before it was kind of uneven, but if you just give it a nice little firm grip, it will pull it taut over the entire caliper. And that little wedge that we removed, we're just gonna put it right back on. And it's just simply squeezing the caliper, you know, right where the rotor goes through. And so we're gonna take the nut that it came with, all right, so we're just gonna take the included Allen key and the included 8mm wrench and just tighten it from there. All right, and once you finish, it looks like it was supposed to be there from the start. It actually looks like a functioning caliper. It was extremely simple. We didn't have to tear the whole thing apart. All you have to do is remove the stock wheels, just clamp it on, a couple turns of a nut and a bolt, and you're good. All right, so now that we have our front passenger side caliper cover installed, all we gotta do is put back on the front wheel, torque it to spec, drop it off the jacks, and then we'll go to the rear. All right, so once you have all the lug bolts finger tight, the most important part of this process is actually getting these back torqued to spec so that it's safe when driving down the road. Ram recommends 130 foot-pound-feet of torque for each one of your lug nuts. So we have our torque wrench set to 130 pounds. We're gonna get all these in a star pattern, double check it, and then we'll move on. All right, so once you get the lug nuts about finger tight, just hit it real quick just to make sure that they're pretty tight with your torque wrench, but obviously you can't torque it down to spec yet because the tire's still off the ground, it's just gonna spin freely. So all of our lug nuts are pretty fastened. We're gonna drop it off of the jack, and then we're gonna torque it to 130 foot-pound-feet of torque per Ram specs. Once you got it all torqued to spec, just do the same thing on the other front side and you're good to go. All right, now we're at the rear of the truck. We're gonna make sure that we have the correct caliper cover to where when it mounts on, the bleeder valve is facing up. And we're just gonna do what we did before. We're gonna jack up the truck. I'm gonna use my floor jack. I'm gonna lift at the pumpkin, and that way we can go ahead and just get both rear wheels up at the same time. After, of course, we break the lug nuts free, and then we'll just do the same process that we did on the front. All right, so just like last time, we're just gonna remove these lug nuts, take off the wheel, this would probably be easier with a power tool, but it's a nice fall day, so I don't mind sitting outside for a bit. Now we're just going to take the wheel, set it off to the side so we can access that caliper. And again, we're making sure that we have the correct caliper cover, which is the one with the rubber bleeder facing up and this metal line on the bottom side. Again, like the front, we're going to want to remove the nut so that this way it can clamp on. And again, using the supplied tools from inside of the kit, we're going to want to tighten up this screw and nut. And the main thing that we're checking for is where these clamp over the caliper. Because it sits between the caliper and the rotor, we're just making sure that there's enough clearance from the metal bracket that's holding it on and the rotor itself, so that as the rotor spins, it's not making contact with the bracket. Not that much space, but it clears. So now that we have the rear caliper put back on, we're just gonna put it all back together like we did the front, torquing to 130 foot-pound-feet of torque to make sure it's safe. Repeat the process on the other side, and we're done. And one important thing to note is that these were made to go with the stock Ram wheels. If you were running aftermarket wheels, you need to make sure that there's enough clearance, even though this caliper cover is very thin. If your aftermarket wheels have very minimal clearance on your current caliper, double check that they're not going to contact each other when in motion. So now that we have the caliper covers on the rear installed and we've put the wheel back on, finger tighten the lug nuts, we're going to take it off the jack, and then that way we can torque it to spec and we'll be good. Again, we want to hit this with 130 foot-pound-feet of torque. And just to make sure that they're all to spec. We're good to go. All right, everybody, that's how simple it is to install the Rough Country Red Caliper Kit on this 2021 Ram 1500 Limited.
So that's going to wrap it up for my review and the install of these Rough Country Red Brake caliper covers for the front and rear, fitting all 2019 and newer Ram 1500s. And remember, for all things Ram, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.